14 certified welders walked off an American job site last Wednesday morning, and by Thursday, a 30-year project manager said something no one in his position has ever said publicly before. He looked at his crew, looked at his schedule, and told the company he could not finish the job. Not late, not over budget. He could not finish it at all. If you have ever wondered what a $400 million mistake sounds like, it sounds exactly like that. Stay with me, because what happened next changed the conversation about American infrastructure in ways that nobody in Washington was prepared for. It began at a press conference in Houston. A reporter asked a straightforward question about the long-standing bilateral labor agreements that have allowed Canadian skilled tradespeople to work on American industrial projects for decades. These agreements exist for a very specific reason. The domestic American workforce, despite being talented and dedicated, is simply too small to staff the scale of mega projects that American energy companies are currently building. The president's response did not acknowledge any of that. Instead, he went in a completely different direction. He called Canadian workers overrated. He said they should be grateful for the privilege of working on American soil. And then he said the word that set everything in motion. He called them replaceable. Every single one of them. Replaceable by Tuesday. Those three words are going to cost the American economy more than $8 billion. And that number is still climbing. Drop a comment right now if you think that statement was a mistake, because what unfolded in the next 72 hours will shock you. Within 3 hours of that press conference, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney did not call a diplomatic meeting. He did not send a politely worded letter through official channels. He activated a response that had clearly been prepared and waiting for exactly this moment. The Canadian Department of Labor issued an immediate advisory, urging all Canadian skilled tradespeople working on American projects to return home within 30 days. The bilateral labor mobility agreements were suspended on the spot. Expedited work permits were opened for Canadian tradespeople seeking employment across Canada, the European Union, the United Kingdom, Australia, and the Gulf states. And then came the move that sealed it. Canada announced a $20,000 retention bonus, funded entirely by tariff revenue collected on American imports, paid directly to any Canadian tradesperson who came home and committed to 2 years of domestic work. The message was precise and surgical. If America did not want them, the rest of the world did, and Canada would pay its own people to come back and prove it. Carney's statement that evening carried a tone that nobody had heard from him before. He said Canadian workers are not overrated. They are not replaceable. They are not grateful for the privilege of building someone else's country. They are the best trained, most certified, most professional skilled tradespeople in the world. And they deserve to work in environments where their skill is respected, their contribution is valued, and their dignity is intact. If the president believes Canadian welders and pipe fitters and iron workers are replaceable, Canada respectfully invites him to replace them. And America tried. What happened next is where this story becomes impossible to ignore. So if this is reaching you for the first time, follow along, because the real cost is only just beginning to show. In Midland, Texas, that same pipeline project lost 14 certified welders from a single crew. These were not general laborers. These were journeymen holding specialized certifications in advanced welding processes that fewer than 500 people across all of North America are qualified to perform. The American welders remaining on site told their project manager clearly that the critical welds could not be completed without that Canadian crew. He called 3 other pipeline contractors in the region. Each one gave him the same answer. No one with that certification had been available for the past 2 years. In Pennsylvania, a nuclear reactor maintenance shutdown was postponed indefinitely after the specialized Canadian team responsible for working on reactor vessel internals was recalled home. The utility company notified federal regulators that finding and qualifying replacement personnel could take 4 to 6 months. The cost for that single facility, covering replacement power and extended operational adjustments, was projected at $75 million. In Manhattan, 11 Canadian ironworkers who had functioned as a team for 8 consecutive years walked off a high-rise project on a Wednesday morning. Their site superintendent, an American with 25 years in New York construction, later told reporters that after they told him they were leaving, he stood in the construction elevator and stared at the floor for 5 straight minutes. He had spent 3 years trying to find an American crew that could match their pace and their safety record. He never found one. In Louisiana, an LNG terminal expansion that was 7 months from completion came to a full stop when Canadian crane operators and pipe fitting crews packed their tools and drove north. The projected completion date is now listed simply as unknown. The cost overrun from that single stoppage, according to documents filed with state regulators, stands at $400 million. Now, here is what most people still do not fully understand about why this cannot simply be fixed with a job posting. America is currently short 650,000 skilled construction workers. The average age of a certified welder working in the United States today is 55 years old. Apprenticeship enrollment in the construction trades has fallen 31% over the past 2 decades. For every 5 skilled tradespeople who retire, only 3 enter the field to replace them. This is not a temporary disruption. This is a structural collapse that has been building quietly for 40 years, rooted in an education policy shift that told an entire generation that working with their hands was a lesser path. Canadian tradespeople were never taking American jobs. They were filling positions that American companies had been unable to staff with available domestic workers for years. Canadian Red Seal certification requires between 6,000 and 10,000 hours of supervised training and technical instruction before a worker can be certified. Canadian welding standards for pipeline and pressure vessel work exceed American Welding Society requirements in several categories. These are among the most highly trained tradespeople in the Western Hemisphere, and American companies had recruited them deliberately and at significant cost because that level of skill simply did not exist in sufficient supply domestically. Behind the data are the people. A welder named Mark had spent 12 years building American pipelines. He arrived at 26 with a duffel bag and a welding hood. Over those 12 years, he trained 14 American apprentices, bought a truck in Odessa, attended a Baptist church every Sunday with his girlfriend's family, and coached a youth baseball team on weekends. His foreman, a Texan with 30 years in oilfield construction, called him the best welder he had ever supervised. When the advisory came, Mark spent 2 days weighing his decision. He did not want to leave. Texas had become home. But his mother called from Quebec after watching the press conference. His union told him Alberta had immediate placements waiting. His foreman reached out, voice breaking, and said he understood. Mark told a Canadian broadcaster afterward, "He called me replaceable. I have been here 12 years. I trained the guys who are going to have to finish this pipeline without me. I coached their kids on the baseball diamond. And the president went on television and said I should be grateful, and I am replaceable. I am not angry. I am hurt. There is a difference. Angry, I would stay and fight. Hurt, I go home. And I am going home. He can replace me. Let him try." In New York, an ironworker foreman named Gene had lived in Queens for 6 years. Every workday, he ate lunch at the same deli on Lexington Avenue. The day he told the owner he was leaving, the owner taped a handwritten sign to the front window. It read, "We will miss our Canadian boys. They are not replaceable to us." Gene said in an interview, "I love this city. I love the skyline. Every time I look up and see steel I put there, I feel proud. But pride has a limit. I will not work where the man in charge of the country I am working in goes on television and says I should be grateful. I am not grateful. I am skilled. There is a meaningful difference. Grateful is what you feel when someone hands you something you did not earn." Gene had earned every inch of every beam he ever set. The political consequences arrived from a direction the White House did not anticipate. The International Brotherhood of Boilermakers, the United Association of Plumbers and Pipe Fitters, and the International Association of Bridge, Structural, Ornamental, and Reinforcing Ironworkers released a joint statement, a move with no real precedent in American labor politics. American unions stood publicly to defend Canadian workers and directly condemned the president's remarks. Their statement said, "Skilled tradespeople, regardless of nationality, deserve respect for their training, their certification, and their contribution to the projects they build." When a leader calls skilled workers replaceable, it diminishes every welder, every pipe fitter, every iron worker on both sides of the border. Skill is not determined by the passport a person carries. These were unions whose members had strongly supported this administration during the previous election cycle. Many had attended rallies and believed trade policy would protect American jobs. Now they were publicly separating from the president, not over tariffs, but because they saw his words as an attack on working people and on their own colleagues. 6 state governors, including a Republican who had backed the president consistently, sent formal letters to the White House demanding the bilateral agreements be restored. That governor said publicly, "My state has $12 billion in inactive energy projects that depend on Canadian skilled labor. Calling them replaceable does not make it true. It makes us look foolish." The Construction Industry Association now projects the total economic impact of the Canadian workers' departure could surpass $8 billion within the first year if the labor agreements are not reinstated. That figure traces back to a single press conference and 3 specific words. But beyond the financial cost, something else shifted. Before the president's remarks, most Americans had no idea that tens of thousands of Canadian tradespeople were embedded across the American construction and energy sectors. These workers arrived each morning, completed demanding technical work with precision, and returned home each evening without drawing attention. The insult made them visible. Every stalled project became evidence of the gap they left. Every cost overrun became a receipt for the original dismissal. Every extended timeline became a precise public measurement of exactly how replaceable they actually were, which turned out to be not at all. The president said he could replace them by Tuesday. It has now been more than a month. The pipeline in Texas is still waiting. The high-rise in Manhattan is still incomplete. The reactor in Pennsylvania is still on hold. The terminal in Louisiana has not resumed. Across every one of these sites, American foremen, project managers, and executives are standing in the same place, saying the same thing. We cannot finish this without them. We literally cannot finish this without them. He called them overrated. Their absence proved they were undervalued. He called them replaceable. 3 weeks later, nothing has replaced them. He promised Tuesday. The job sites are still waiting. By trying to diminish the people who build American infrastructure, he stopped American infrastructure from being built. If you want daily updates on how this story develops, share this with someone in the trades. And if this kind of reporting is what you are looking for, subscribing takes 2 seconds and means you will never miss what comes next.